Okay,
We are live.
great. I will call the June 18th workshop for the Wenatchee School Board to order and turn it right on over to Paul and Larry.
Morning, board. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to hand it quickly over to Larry. And within the packet, or in the presentation, what you'll see on a consistent basis are a number of slides that you've seen before. It's always just that good reminder, and Larry will go through those ones a little bit quicker. But then we'll really dive deeply into the overall budget that he has presented, the presentation that he has for you today. So with that, Larry, it's your show.
All right. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we can kind of start walking through the presentation. So there we go. All right. Okay. So, and like Paul said, that there's a number of slides that are existing, and so it's kind of building on past presentation. So, and so we're going to go through, and the emphasis on this presentation is going to be on the general fund in the out years for the general fund. So, and so here's the budget calendar. The only change I made on here was just moving the board presentation. It was preliminarily scheduled in May, moved to today. And I said, that's right, I got the wrong one highlighted. It should be June 18th, but that's the one change that occurred on here. Next, again, the budget is made up of 5 different funds: general fund, ASB fund, debt service fund, capital projects fund, and transportation vehicle fund. And again, we'll be concentrating on the general fund. However, we did make, I mentioned in the last presentation that I had to make a small revision to the transportation vehicle fund, added $15,000 to reflect the estimated actual cost of the 3 buses that are being proposed. So that's reflected at the end of this presentation. Again, this is just the definitions of the funds. This is the high-level summary for the 2021 budget. Again, it's got the general fund, ASB fund, debt service fund, capital projects fund, transportation vehicle fund, and a summary of all of them. And at the bottom here, it's kind of italics and smaller print, is levy information. And this is just a duplication of what's in the actual F-195 budget document that we provide to the state. And we have a $13.6 million budget that was approved by the voters. And we're proposing an $11,489,000 budget for calendar year 2021. So what you see here is the difference between that. It's called a rollback. This would be acted on by the county treasurer. So we're slightly below the voter approved levy amount, and the debt service amount, levy amount, is in here as well. So let me go to the other slides. And what we've talked about the impact of kinder enrollment. And so I thought this slide would be helpful in kind of describing, kind of visually seeing what's going on. And I kind of boxed in the section down below for elementary building enrollment. And you can see where we're in the 500 student range since 2011 and 12. And I'm not sure, no, I mean, since October 2017, and then for 2020, predicting 503 in the building level, and in 2021, 483. And these numbers include the additional 17 students for the transitional kinder. So, so we're seeing some decline. They're not, the Department of Health isn't maintaining the same records that they used to in the past. So I wasn't able to get additional years. Typically I have 2 additional years out here. But I was able to look at the data they had, and in one way of looking at it, it looks like the birth rates could even actually be declining even more. And so what I did here is I separated elementary building from Valley. And when you combine Valley and buildings together, you can see this red line here. And it's a pretty close match to actual birth rates. In the green line I added in here is the elementaries. And so you can kind of see that declining. It's possible that that could continue to decline based on birth rates. Next slide. This is a slide you've seen, and again, this is my predicted decline in enrollment due to opening of the charter school. First year they were opening 2 grade levels, and then 1 grade level after that. By over a 6-year period, maybe adding 1 grade level per year, and the impact would be, I'm predicting an impact of about 70% of 50 students, which is 35 students per grade level. So we'd lose 70 kids in that first year if it happens, and then 35 the following years. And of course, there would be that cumulative impact on the district. And that's not included in this budget because it created some confusion. We're trying to explain what's going to happen, and we're not sure if there's a lot of these privately funded schools that are going to be maybe delaying or even closing. So it didn't make sense to include that at this point. Next slide. This is a different way of slicing the enrollment. And so what I did is I separated out buildings, our normal building enrollment, which is blue, and from ALE, which is the yellow, and Running Start, which is the green, and re-engagement, which is purple. These top two, re-engagement and Running Start, you can see Running Start's been growing. We've been talking about that the last couple of years. And you can see that those, it's about, equals up to about 322 students. We don't instruct those students. They're instructed outside our boundaries. So those are pass-through monies. And then the yellow is ALE. They're not always here. That's the Valley program and Valley Academy of Learning, and about half of the West Side program. So you can kind of see the variation in actual building enrollment here. And of course, it's declining. Okay, next slide. This is just a lot of data here, but this is the actual projections for the 4 years for our general ed population. And just based on where we are, where I was estimating we would be at this point for this year, the 2021 actually is resulting in a little bit of an increase in enrollment. And then we can kind of see the decline, and it's less than 1%, but it's still a steady decline. And then you can see Running Start and Open Doors down below. And these numbers are reflected in the actual apportionment formula based. And so we plug that into the apportionment formula and calculate out the revenues for those out years 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24. This is other enrollment data that we plug into the apportionment model. And so I thought it would just kind of be interesting for you. It's not a lot of details in this, but special ed enrollment, projecting. A couple things are going on here. One is that Birth to 2 program is going away in 2021. And the state changed how they're allocating monies. They changed to a 2-tier system. It was just a 1-tier system prior to this. And so if you are in a classroom a majority of the time, you're in tier 1, and then you get additional funding for that. So it's increasing our funding level just a little bit. And so you can kind of see that being split out there, and predicting an increase in special ed enrollment. There was quite a bit of an increase in enrollment between the budget. This 2019 was actually with the budget and actual for this current year. And and what I'm doing for special ed is I'm predicting, kind of using the prior couple of years, and you can go back quite a few years actually, and you can see a predictable increase in enrollment as the kids move forward from grade level. So I use that to project the enrollment for 2021 and the out years, and I use a slightly lower percentage that I think is will be pretty close to accurate if everything stays constant. CTE enrollment, same thing. You can see the increase. It increases and decreases as high school enrollment increases and decreases. And then we've got grades 7 and 8 in the middle school. And there's some discussions about maybe moving a couple more basic ed classes into CTE, and those aren't reflected in this at this point. Skill Center, I used a flat enrollment, 200, and including summer school. And you can see it's an increase over budget, but actually we're closer to around, for the current year, I'm going to get my slide here. We're closer to around about 209 students for Skill Center. So this 183 is a pretty conservative number. So bottom line is they're able to break even at a fairly low enrollment number right now. And so when I built the model, I built in these numbers, 200 students at the Skill Center. Transitional bilingual, we had a dip in enrollment in traditional bilingual in 1920. This is the budgeted number. It's fairly close to where we ended up to this number, the 1,161 for kinder through 6th and 304. So I rolled up those numbers, assuming that those numbers would stay the same and on the out years as well. This is the budgeted and staffing numbers. They changed just a little bit, and we went through the reconciliation, but and the assumption is that the staffing numbers would stay the same in the out years, and which the district most likely would not do. If we have declining enrollment, there would be adjustments along the way. If the charter school opens, there would be adjustments as well. The one thing that I did do in here is, and it's not reflected in this number, is using some new software. It's called 5CAS, and it's got a lot of utility to it. And I was able to, and I adjusted the special ed revenue to expenditure for local share, the local match. And I kept it at about $500,000 in the out year. So I had to reduce some salary and benefit costs in the 2 out years here to keep in that point. I'd assume that the local match for special ed would be increasing over the $500,000 that's budgeted for the current year. General fund revenues, we've talked about all of these. There's really not much new here. The local taxes, assuming that the assessed valuation growth would be 4%, we're budgeting on a $2.10 levy for the next 4 years. And I talked to the assessor's office, and they were indicating that even a 6% assessed valuation growth for 2021 is pretty conservative. It's going to be probably more like 8%. But again, I assume 4% assessed valuation growth over the next 4 years. Not much new here. These are all kind of the same numbers we've been talking about. The salary projection is based on 1.6% in 2021, and then in 21-22 it goes up to 2%, and it stays at 2% going out. And so that's part of the assumptions that are built into the revenue model. And there's a third professional development day that's in the formula. Whether the state goes through with that with the current financial crisis is unknown. Okay, so kind of back to the levy again, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in slide 17, so I'll kind of defer that. And then you can see I just highlighted here the high poverty. We had an increase in funding due to high poverty. The Wenatchee High School qualified, and so did Foothills. So Wenatchee High School is over $500,000, and so that also resulted in some increased staffing. Okay, budget challenges. We've been talking about these. I don't know if I don't think I modified these slides or not. I think may have added the last item on, I'm not sure. But there's still the issue of the regionalization, estimating that's going to be about $400,000 per year reduction in revenue. Local effort and assistance, we've talked about that as assessed valuation goes up. Funding goes down, and I'm assuming it's about an average about $100,000 loss per year. Declining enrollment due to birth rates. We saw that on the graph. State and federal funding uncertainty. That's quite a wide swing. We saw the state came out with its economic forecast yesterday, and there are some numbers, but unsure how that's going to affect K-12 education at this point. The good news is, and then we've also got COVID costs, and what's that going to cost? The good news is that there was an announcement that the federal stimulus money, the CARES Act money, is expected to be coming in July. So the district has a list of near $1.4 million of COVID costs that would qualify. So good news is that a good share of that will be picked up here in July, it appears. Then we've got impact on enrollment and staffing due to planned opening of charter school in 21-22. So those are some of our big uncertainties. And then, what are the challenges in 21 and 22 and beyond? It's a cumulative effect is really what is gonna be the challenge for the district, is how because right now we have a 6% regionalization allocation in our apportionment formula. That means that we increase the funding level mechanism for a 6% and per FTE, and so we'll be losing that over the next 6 years, and at 1% per year. And as that accumulates, that gap gets larger and larger. So if you think about that, it's $400,000 a year, and I'm talking about the impact on basic education. There's some impacts on some of the other state-funded programs, but they would all stay contained. So that cumulative impact is going to be start making a more significant impact as the years go along. LEA decline will be the same way. As assessed valuation grows, that will continue to have a decline. And if the charter school does in fact start up, that will have an accumulative impact over the 6-year period as well, starting in 21-22, according to their press release. Continued COVID costs, will they end in this year, the following year, or will they continue on? Looks like right now that's possible, with some of those costs and additional costs will be continuing on for some years. Replacement cycle for technology. We built the replacement costs, additional replacement costs, into the budget, and here's some. I'm just kind of throw out some numbers for you. For in the 2021 budget, we've added $690,000 over the baseline budget. The baseline budget being 1920, added over the 1920 budget $719,000 in 2021, and then it goes up to $800,000. So it would just be the increments between the prior year, and 23-24 would be $281,000, and then $814 and $847. So there's some continuing somewhere in the neighborhood between $700,000 and $800,000 per year additional costs over the baseline budget, the 1920 baseline budget. And curriculum adoption cycle. The costs will start showing up in the 21-22 budget, and those are in the neighborhood of about $500,000 to $825,000. And so the first year would be $825,000, second year $750,000, $625,000, $720,000, and $500,000. So you can kind of see how that happens, but that's built into the budget. And the 21, and there was a question about what other programs might be continuing that might not be funded in the future. And the 21st Century grant is probably the most significant of the grants that are required to be renewed. And there's some uncertainty about that. Fortunately, the Lincoln and Lewis and Clark program was extended It actually expired in 21-22, but it was extended 1 year. So that was good news. And we spend about, the budget's about $150,000 per school. So that was about $300,000 grant. Newberry is going to expire in 22-23. And then the Pioneer, Orchard, Mission View, Columbia 21st Century program that has a $250,000 district match is scheduled to expire in 23-24. So the challenge is continuing the program if you requiring local costs, local share, like a 250 match or a 100% match, there would be some financial impact to the district. Okay, next slide. This is kind of give you a picture of the levy increase that we're proposing. And top banner here is levy, lower banner is LEA. They're kind of connected together, and that's why I put in the pie chart. I combined the $2 amounts together. You can see in our current levy for the calendar year, calendar year 2020 was $1.73, and we're proposing a levy in 2021 of approximately $11.5 million, or a tax rate of $2.10 per thousand assessed valuation. And then using that same number with a 4% assessed valuation growth out for the out years. And you can see, based on that 4% assessed valuation growth, you can see that LEA is declining year after year. It's in the neighborhood of $100,000 a year. And the fiscal year impact is just a little bit different. Levies are calendar year levies. They start January 1st and December 31. And but our budget is a fiscal year, which starts September 1, ending August 31. And so we cross over between the two levies. And so you can see the impact of the levy increase and how it helps the district here. And one thing that's a little bit misleading here is in the slide, these numbers right here are budget numbers, and in reality, our levy was actually during this time period, it's because the $150 levy was based on, you got as much as that $1.50 based on your assessed valuation. We had assessed valuation growth, so that resulted in some growth here in the 1920. And so we're actually going to collect in the neighborhood for the fiscal year, we're going to collect in the neighborhood of $8 million. So a couple $100,000 more. And the budgeted LEA was $4.7 million. And because we had pretty significant assessed valuation growth, that is actually going to be $4.3 million. So there was quite a gap there because we had a significant AV growth. And so it kind of tells you how that works. And then you can see the differences from year to year as money's increase. 2021 is going to be an increase from budget to budget of about $2.2 million, and then it'd be about $400,000 for 21-22, and 22-23 would be about $500,000. Okay, and next slide is revenues. This is the same slide that we saw in the past, and basically what's happening here is levy, LEA, levy and LEA together is going up just a little bit, 11% to 12%, and state offsets and state revenues are 59% of our budget versus 60% of our budget in the prior year. On the expenditure side, same thing, 84%. You've seen this before, 84% of our expenditures are staffing. So that's a significant, people are a significant part of the budget here. And these slides here, and what I did is I broke out, I've got two sections. I've got the certificated staffing and changes and from budget to budget, from the 1920 budget to the 2021 budget. And I've also have a section on classified staffing changes. And the numbers that I have here are, you could tie into the F195, but this is the 2-digit budget number and activity. And so 01 represents basic ed, and here the 21 represents supervision. So in basic ed supervision, these are the changes that we had in here. And then 01 basic ed, 22 is library, so basic ed library, and we had a change of a 0.75 librarian. Librarian was moved in 1920 to instruction. So the library position was still there. They were just classified as an instructor. They were doing some instruction during 3/4 of their time. Counselor, we had a 0.5 counselor in the 1920 budget. I'm not quite sure why that ended up there. I think that was removed along the way, and it never, it was too late to remove it from the budget. So that position was never hired. 0127 basic ed, 27 is teaching, and so we had some changes in teaching. Transitional kinder at Columbia is the 1.0. We also added a teacher for second grade at Sunny Slope due to growth. We have a teacher on leave that's built into the budget, and then we moved a position to program 79 because it's fully locally funded. And then we just added the other changes in there. Extracurricular, this is another one of those where we had actually eliminated this position during the reductions, but it was too late to take it out of the budget document. So that was never hired at 0.5. And then we have instructional programs, and this is just other locally funded programs. And then we moved the position from 01, and then we reclassified some of the locally funded AVID teachers, teaching positions to LAP during 1920, and so that's reflected in the 2021 budget. So there was a savings to the basic ed by moving that position. Special ed, we had some increases here. Some of these increases were added in the 1920 school year, and then we've got categorical. You can kind of see changes. Then it depends from year to year what kind of funding and what kind of support is being provided. And you can see LAP, certificated staff increasing, which has to do with the high cap additional funding that we talked about earlier. And some increases in transitional bilingual and a little increase in highly capable. And these are the classified basic ed, program 1. We had some reductions there. We may have over budgeted in 1920. Most likely, I don't think all of those positions were filled in 1920. And but they were anticipated to be filled when we built the budget. Program 21-24, which is special ed, not 22, which is going away. We had classified staffing increases. Some of these were filled in 1920. We had a small increase in CTE classified staffing, and we had an addition of this classified staffing increase happened in 1920. And in the skill center, we had an addition of a classified position to support one of the shops and also help out with equipment inventory, which was an audit issue. And program 79 is, again, locally funded, a little bit of change in AVID, a little bit of change in 21st century. We have there's a $250,000 district match to the 21st century grant. And there was a staffing position that was in there, and it was just moved out. So it's just a move. They moved into programs, probably into program 52, where the where the majority of the funding is for those programs. Categorical, program 51, which is Title I, Title II, you can see migrant, LAP program, classified staff, there was a small reduction, truancy, classified, there was an increase and a slight change in transitional bilingual. And Program 79 is the support services, which includes the district office, maintenance, grounds, technology. And you can see the changes here. We added the grounds person back and we reduced the craftsman position. And Program 98, which is food service, we added some staffing this year to help out with the increase. The program is increasing the number of students that they're serving, so there is a need for additional staffing. And in pupil transportation, the FT for supervision increased slightly because we reclassified the dispatcher position to a coordinator, and the position is now full year rather than just a partial year. Here's the general fund, and I thought this would be a little bit helpful to kind of see. It's kind of buried in the budget. You don't see it. It's not visible anywhere. But these numbers are the local match or local funding for probably the biggest local funding other than some of the basic ed areas. And so for special ed, we built the budget in 1920 with $357,000 in local funding. And the budget for 2021 has $546,000 in local funding. The budget for 2021 includes, you've heard us talk about the safety net funding. We go through that process. We don't hear about the actual outcome of it until July or August. And we submitted a little over $600,000 of safety net applications this year. And so we built into the budget receiving $400,000 of safety net funding, which seemed to be a pretty safe number. Highly capable, $252,000 in local match, went up to $304,000 due to salary increases. Instructional other programs, this is where we have our AVID and a number of different, coming through here, a number of different programs, PGO family, 21st century, $250,000, AVID at $238,000 in there. Those are the big numbers. PGO $200,000. And so that local match went up just a little bit. Other community services, it's program 89. Those are Mariachi Jazz Festival and Wenatchee Learns and a couple other small things. So that number stayed the same, 67,000. Local match to food service, we budgeted 46,000 in 1920. This year it looked like we were going to have something like 100,000 to the good until the COVID hit. And but I think Chris is doing a pretty darn good job in comparison to everybody else in the world. And it looks like we'll be close to being back at the end of this year. And but we budgeted next year at 137,000 local match. And people transportation budgeted 240,000 local match last year, and went up to 303. And so those were built into the budget right now. So next slide, general fund MSOX. This is just kind of give you an idea of what we're doing with the material, supplies, operating costs, which are non-salary and benefit costs. And the building budget, we based the building budget on projected enrollment. So the 2021 budgets that are in basic ed are based on projected enrollment number each year. And curriculum adoption, we're not seeing any curriculum and adoption significant increases in 2021, but we will start seeing them show up in 21, 22, and it started at 825,000. And those numbers are reflected in the 4-year budgets. Technology, we had an increase of 689,000 at the baseline cost. And then those other numbers we talked about earlier are spread out through the 4-year budget. And summer project budget, we've got 250,000. District historically had 250,000 in there for summer projects. and that's still in the budget. Utilities, increased those by $121,000 to the baseline. Part of that was just under budgeting in 1920, and about half of that, a little over half of that. So that was adjusting the utilities, and then built in about a 3% increase per year in the out years. Insurance increased about $80,000 to the baseline. And when talking to our insurance broker, they told us to, because of COVID and the stock market issues that were going on at the time, they said to budget in the range of 10 to 20% increase in our rates. And so I used, it ended up about 18% increase that I built into the budget, and then I escalated it 3% per year. And the remainder of the MSOCs, I did not increase. We went through an exercise here a month or so ago to see what we could reduce in the current year budget, and it was pretty successful. And so that gave me a sense that we really didn't need to add any escalations to our existing budgets. That monies are going to be moved around this year. It's really it's going to be kind of invent as you go, but I think there's going to be plenty of budget capacity in there to move monies around, and we'll have a decent starting fund balance of this year. So I think those two will be able to cover whatever is needed. Here is the 4 years budget, and there's some excess of expenditures over revenue in 21, 22, all the way up to 23, 24. These wouldn't be actual numbers that where the district would really truly end up there. There would be some adjustments or staffing or revenue enhancement of some sort, or changing how we use categorical monies. So there would be some adjustments along the way. These numbers, again, do not include the charter school impact. And the charter school impact in the first year, I'm estimating that they'd start off with 2 grade levels, which would be about 70 students, which translate into a little over $600,000. So there would be some impact from year to year, but you would have, the fund balance would be enough to be able to adjust from year to year and figure out how to accommodate those changes. Again, what we have in here, and I guess the other part to think about this is that this is a general guideline and it shows you that there are some fiscal challenges coming down the pipe, which we were all aware of, and so we have plenty of time to adjust the budget to take on those challenges. And let's see, I'm just going to look at my notes here. This budget was also built using, and I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but using the 5Cast software, and we've got a module, a way of projecting salaries. And I believe the salary part of it, because it was escalated, I escalated the salaries based on expected IPD, which is in the apportionment formula. So we've got the revenue expenditures matching each other. But escalated total salaries, and so it probably overstates the salaries just a little bit. That can be fine-tuned over the years. And again, the good news is that we've got the CARES Act money coming in July, and this budget is, these 4-year budgets will be rolled into a document called the F-195F, which was new here a couple of years ago. And so the state, we are required to roll our budget into an F-195, which you'll see at the next board meeting. And that's to be reviewed by the ESD, and eventually approved by the state. It's part of the budget adoption process in August. And so we'll be submitting that for review to the ESD. Required to have that publicly available by July 10th of each year. So easily hit that mark. And it's the preliminary budget, so it can change, but it's probably not necessary to change, won't be necessary to change the budget because there's so many unknowns that are coming up in the current year that the district will be inventing as they go. And the important thing is to establish some budget authority so you can continue to work, and there's the budget authority is there to be able to accomplish what you need to next year. And so we submit the F-195, the larger document, to the ESD. We also submit the smaller 4-year budget to the ESD for review as well. And then that will be part of the budget hearing also, and you will see those documents at the board meeting, next board meeting. And we will make those available, which we'll make available to the general public. Okay, so going on, these are just the fund balance amounts, and just to show you that it does change. This is the estimated beginning fund balance. Total fund balance $10,493,000, or about 9.3% of the prior year budget, or 1920 budget, and the ending budget is about $10,386,000, about 8.81% of the 2021 budget expenditures. And you can just see where these pieces are. Not all of it is available for spending, general spending. Some of these monies are carryovers, and they're restricted. We've got some LAP monies and CTE monies and some other miscellaneous monies in there. And those are all, the $535,000 are restricted monies. You can't use them for just general basic ed purposes. They have to be used for those specific purposes. Skill Center has a carryover, and again, it has to be used for the specifically for the Skill Center. And good news is that they're starting to increase their balance so that they can add improve programs or add new programs. And assigned to other purposes, it's just kind of a catch-all. The $261,000. Typically, we have building budget carryovers in here, which we've removed. All the carryovers have been recaptured, so this number would typically be higher. And then we have the minimum 5% by board policy, and the remainder goes into just regular unassigned. Totals up. And again, the ending fund balance is the same exercise, such as drawing down the fund balance from your budget by a couple $100,000. And that's the end of the general fund. And any questions we can go back and answer?
Yes. Anybody on the board want to
Questions?
go first?
Come on.
Martin, Michelle, you both unmuted.
I do have a few questions, but I don't have to have them answered all at once. Just the slide you were going over, Larry, the beginning and ending fund balance, since we're right there.
Yep.
I noticed that the restricted for Skills Center went up from beginning to end. So can you?
Yeah, and they are
about that.
Yeah, they're more than breaking even now. They're actually ending up with a surplus, which is good, which they should be doing, so that they can put money away to enhance programs down the road. So that's what that was built on, the assumption that their enrollment would be more than enough to break even.
But shouldn't they be eating some of that budget? I mean, eating into that budget for programs, things like that, or
they may. And when I built this initially I thought that they would still be able to increase their enrollment more. It's possible they will still do okay. The summer school issue and how to run that is somewhat maybe of a challenge this year, but they're still above break even without summer school. So I think it's possible that they'll figure out a way to more than break even. But if they don't, they still have that 200, to go back to the other one, they got $275,000 probably from this year that they'll be able to draw on for in the 2021.
Okay. And then before the fund balance breakdowns, the general fund budget for the 5 years, sorry, this current year and the next 4, did I hear you correctly that the enrollment numbers are not, the enrollment adjusted numbers for the charter school taken into account impacting our revenue is not reflected in this?
Correct. I'm going to add it as a just a note in the 4-year budget, the F-195F, and it's just because of the uncertainty. It's hard to know whether that's really going to happen, whether that's going to be delayed a year or whatever, and so
Sure.
kind of muddied the picture. This is kind of saying if everything is the way it is right now, but yes, that's correct.
Well, worst case scenario, that first year at the 21-22 year, even though it's not on here, the enrollment numbers that you projected kind of earlier in the presentation, how would we expect that to translate here? Even though I understand that it's tentative at this point, but I think it's helpful for the board to have some sense of how that's going to affect us financially. So what would be the financial impact on that?
Yeah, in the first year, they were planning on opening 2 grade levels, 6 and 7. And I was estimating that they would have about 25 kids in each classroom. So that's about 50 kids. And 70% of those kids would come from our school district. So that translates into 70 FTE. And right now for the 2021 school year, 1 FTE, we get apportionment about 8,852 per FTE. And so that translates into about a loss of $620,000 apportionment in the 21-22 year, if that played out exactly that way. In the following year, it'd be half of that. It'd be 300,000 additional because it'd only be, according to their press release, it'd only be 1 grade level.
In addition, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then I think my last questions for now revolve around the increases in certificated and classified staff that you kind of broke down. There were some big bumps in special ed in particular, both in certificated and classified staff. And I'm kind of wondering, were we understaffed before? Have we seen our special ed numbers go up? Could you maybe give us some understanding of why we're seeing those projected staffing increases for special ed?
Yeah, we've seen some significant increases in special ed enrollment. I'm kind of pull up my little graph book here so I can look at it while I'm talking to you. But when we budgeted the 19-20 year, we had some pretty phenomenal growth in 18-19 and didn't really believe that that would continue on. And in fact, it did. So we had that growth. It wasn't built into the budget, the revenue side or the expenditure side. So, so some of this staffing growth has to do with the growth that actually happened in 1920. And another piece of it has to do with the growth that's anticipated in 2021. So it's catching up. And that's kind of what's been happening over the last couple of years. It's been playing catch up, and we don't end up hiring those positions until late in the year. And so this was an attempt to try to align funding enrollment trends with staffing.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for now. I'll let you know if I have any more. Thanks.
Martin?
Okay, I'll take over. I have mostly clarifications, but the first thing I want to do is thank Larry and the finance and the district staff for putting together a presentation that's got substantially more useful information for review than the preliminary, and it's got good, important data. So I really appreciate that. Well done. Thank you. So I'll try to be short on these. clarify, if the CARES 1.4 million comes in, it sounds like that would be a variance to your opening reserves. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, it would. It would be an improvement.
Okay, so basically you don't show it, but if it comes in, we'll start off with 1.4 million more.
Well, roughly, and we're probably
Yeah, I'm dealing approximate numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, and I realize there's a lot of uncertainty as to what we're going to spend on it, and I see you've included that.
Yep.
Then this is just a tiny little thing, and thanks for putting in the demographic and birth data on Kinder, because that helped a lot. That was a nice display. The question I asked is on page 9, you have 543 in K, and in page 6, you have 523 with Valley. There's something I don't know.
Okay. Which pages again?
Page 9, you have 543 coming into the K in the table. Yeah, no, back one.
Oh, the K right here.
No, it's the table with with that one there. If you go down to the orange, you've got 503 plus 20, 523.
Yep.
And then if you go to the one that's a number table, it says 543. I think it's one down from there or two down from there, maybe.
Next one.
Next one. Yeah. There, 543.
Oh. Yeah.
If that's a typo, take a quick look on your final. If it's, it's not a huge number. If it's a category of people that exist that I don't know about, educate me.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Okay, no, that's fine. Something that I would like to know, when you have the increase in technology, what does that include? And I'll lead with my chin. It seems to me that with distant learning, we should expect to need both hardware and software. And I wasn't sure how much would be in the general budget and how much might be in a capital budget when it's that kind of thing. So what's in your roughly $600,000-$800,000 a year? Just roughly.
It's mostly, I'd have to go back and look at the details because it was provided by Ron Brown.
Ron's on the call.
Yeah.
So Ron, if you want to jump on just to add that clarity to it.
Do you know what page you're seeing that on, Martin?
Sorry?
Do you know what page you're seeing that figure on?
Page 27's got the technology assumption.
Thank you.
And I tell you where I'm coming from. I listen to people talking around the country and they say, I'm a really lucky district. Everybody's got a laptop of some kind, and we've got all the hardware and the software works. And then we're kind of in the middle, and then there are rural districts that have got nothing. And so I was curious, and it's no more than that. I need to know what the plan is, what we think we can do, how far we can go to get to 100% coverage for students at home and using Chromebooks or whatever. And if that was part of it, or if that is nothing to do with that.
It actually is part of it, and that's why you see the increase in the baseline budget. What we've never, how do I say this the right way? We've never probably had the best cycle of refresh. In taking over a couple months ago, we re-examined what we had done over the past years, and we had some random updating. I'll call it that. We didn't have a very good systemic plan of refreshing devices on their lifetime. We also were at a place where about half of our students could have a device assigned to them. So what we did is we leveraged some CARES dollars, we leveraged some year-end dollars and some other ways of getting to a place where, as of this fall, all of our students will have an assigned device. And in that's going to take a future-ready plan to look at 4 years from now. We have to cycle, or 5 years from now, or 6 years from now. The student device lifetime is about 6 years. We're going to have to buy devices each year to stay up with those updates. So that is something that had not been in our past budget for technology. It was more of a random, we have some money, let's do some. Let's have some money, let's do some. We want to be much more systemic with that, and we want to have predictability. So we know exactly how much every year, how many devices every year we're going to replace, so that we can keep on top of it and keep all of our staff devices, student devices, servers, and other hardware at a place where we can be confident all kids will have a device, all staff will have a device, they'll all work in this remote learning environment, because that is not going away. We will be a blended environment from now forward, regardless of any pandemic. And our teachers will become very proficient at using these tools with the kids for learning. So yes, there was definitely a change, and now the access at home, we haven't really cracked the what can we do about home internet, but we're down to around 3% of our kids who can't. So again, that's still a collaborative arrangement with our public, and what can the SCC do, what can E-rate do potentially to help us with ways of helping students with the internet access at home. But as far as a device, by fall, we should be 100% every student with a device assigned to them and available for learning.
Okay, well, that's great. And to clarify, that's what I was looking for. I realized we were uncertainty. So it is a ratchet up, and it is we have to have a range of expected outcomes, not a hold your feet to the fire. Okay.
One of those pieces, Martin, I just add, and then Ron add on to this. Through that CARES Act, what we've really talked about, a significant amount of the dollars that we're spending out of that 1.4 is technology. It is. So, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe almost every student could be one-to-one if we needed to go back to an online teaching situation that we just came out of. Ron, would you?
Yeah, and I would actually be stronger than almost. We will be one-to-one. We are going to have to use some devices that aren't the most optimal. We're not quite there yet. I think after next year's refresh, I feel a little better, but we're going to have some that are a little older. They'll still work. They're not perfect, but we are pretty confident we will be one-to-one with our students in the fall. So this is, we spent a substantial chunk of the CARES dollars. But again, that was important then to ratchet up year to year so that we aren't in that position 4 or 5 years from now going, how do we replace these things that are dying or end of life or need repairing? We needed that predictable cycle of refresh.
It really felt good about, because that's exactly what the state superintendent and others have asked school districts to do, is really look to be spending one time, because these are one-time dollars, and in purchasing the items that will help you in long term with this type of situation. We really feel like we're really meeting the letter and the spirit of the Federal CARES Act.
No, that's great.
Building. Okay, so the plan, you say the plan is reflected in the 4-year budget. So you're talking about the refresh of devices, but what about support? Because we all know you have more devices, there's more service going to be needed to be provided to individuals to support those. Is that
we
right?
haven't currently increased the support personnel, but we again, I think we're going to have to play that by ear. We think we're in a pretty good position moving forward with leveraging some of our personnel we haven't maybe leveraged in the past, some of our support personnel in the buildings that are already there, some tweaking to their training and how they handle teacher support or student support. Also potentially, and I've been working with Stacy Bain and Mike Lane on leveraging some of our instructional coaches and their improving their expertise and helping out with how do we use these technology tools. So it's not a siloed thing. It's part of what we do. It's part of learning and teaching. And we need to become better at using these tools. So I think it's a multifaceted approach, but we have not added staff for support. I'm really confident in our technology staff that we currently have in terms of the back end management, those kind of things. The tools have come so far. They're a lot easier than they used to be to manage. They're a lot simpler to get into our systems and assign, enroll, and just the administrative piece has decreased every year with the better technology. So I think we're in a pretty good place. That doesn't mean 6 months from now we might re-examine and say, boy, teachers are really needing X help. We got to figure that out. But right now, I think we're in a pretty good spot for the fall.
I'd also say one of the silver linings, I mean, there are very few silver linings of the pandemic, but one of them was literally thrusting every teacher, no choice, into touching their computers. And as Ron said, and others, for many, they've been really nervous around the technology. There was really no choice. And then the PD that Ron and Mike and Stacy and many others provided teachers, we saw that grow. So I think that's what gives us also a little bit more confidence that we can do high quality PD in a different way than we've ever done before. We don't need to have everybody come to the district office or somewhere else to deliver the PD. That can still increase the individual's capabilities with the technology. So we've learned a little bit through this. Not that everybody's a tech wizard because of this, but we have definitely increased the capacity of the background knowledge and ability within the use of technology for our educators.
I think that's really great. Although I just want to say that in the past, when we've talked about moving to one-to-one, in a more significant, robust way throughout the district, there are a couple of things that came out. One was lack of support from the public. Maybe we're over that. But the other thing is that the budgeted costs for upkeep and refresh were pretty significant. So it is concerning to me that I get what you're saying about the devices are improving and they're requiring less maintenance and so on, but it concerns me a little bit that we're using the phrase play it by ear in a 4-year budget when we're talking about tech support, because I'm afraid that we're going to get a big surprise down the road. We haven't planned adequately.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think we're going down this with cautious optimism because of what Ron talked about, his collaborative efforts with Stacy and Mike and others to really think differently about all of our staff. How do we utilize the staff that we have and the support structures to go outside of the current box of this is your only job, and expanding that, but giving them the right tools with Ron and the Rays of the world and others, not just saying, oh, look, now you're a tech person, but literally working with Ron and the Rays and the people who get the technology, the instructional side of the technology, and how to actually use it. Because that's always been the barrier with technology is here's a pretty laptop, go forth and use it. But we have to continue doing a better job of what's the outcome we're seeking and how does the tech actually support that? Mm-hmm. And how does it help us move that forward? And that's one of Ron's passion areas, and one of the areas that is saying, okay, if we're just doing tech just to do tech, I don't want to do it. But if we're using tech to actually improve the outcomes for kids, that's where he and Ray and his team have greater insights to help our teachers. So it's really thinking about our other coaches, our MTSS coaches and others throughout the organization to say, how do we support people differently and not just saying, good luck, God bless, we'll see you at the end of the school year and hope it all worked out for you, because that's not a plan. But we hear what you're saying. We are cautiously optimistic that our plan will support us through this large purchase of technology.
I don't even think it's a short-term cautiously optimism because we do also leverage our PLC groups and teams that we could do a better job of leveraging those PLC teams. We have experts all across this district that are passionate about using these tools and providing relevant teaching and learning experiences for kids. And we need to, empower them to step up on their small teams, grade level teams, subject teams, to help out those teams, because that's where we can really get the bang for our buck with our own internal staff and leadership with these tools. And with the collaborative effort with learning and teaching, I'm really excited to see what we can do to support the use of the tools with the lens of it's just what the right thing is to do for kids in our classrooms, whether we're online, remote, blended, face-to-face.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get us down to the weeds.
Oh, no, you're,
So,
Yeah, totally okay. When I see that number, and I knew these questions would come because it's a significant investment in a yearly budget over time, but it's also something we haven't had this systemic predictability. It is an investment each year, but each year we can have the confidence that we're updating enough devices so that we're not going to be in a position down the road of saying, boy, I need $1 million because we need to refresh these because they're too old.
Yeah.
It will keep us there and keep us where we need to be
okay,
moving forward.
we need to move along because I've got a number of questions and I see that Maria's unmuted. Do you have some questions, Maria?
I'm just wondering if are districts eligible for FEMA funding in addition to CARES funding?
We did apply for the FEMA funding, and it's still in process. I'm not exactly sure where Karen is with that, but we did for it. We've been receiving emails on that. It's pretty limited what we can do.
So I have a question going back to maybe the broader picture. I have a number of questions. So back on one of your very first slides, you talked about a $2 million rollback, which requires board action. And yet I'm seeing an overall increase in the general fund budget by $5 million. And tying into that, I assume most of that is salary increases. I'd like to put a number to that. And I'm wondering about the governor's announcements of eliminating state employees, COLA increases, and is education impacted in any of that?
I didn't prepare a slide. Well, I did not prepare a slide that said the overall salary increases, but I've got the F-195 here. So,
and Larry, as you're thinking about that piece, I think the overall salary increase for basic and then overall increase for like special education is funded differently, and making sure that we delineate what's that base ed increase and then what are all the increases in the different categorical areas.
yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it, Larry.
As we have talked before, Larry, and it's hard to come up with messaging that's very clear when we're talking about declining enrollment, and yet we continue to have an increase in our overall general fund budget every single year. So, I want to get to the messaging. So you put together a beautiful presentation that has lots and lots and lots of details in it. And as Martin said earlier, I do appreciate having all those details, but the general public is going to pick up the abbreviated version. And so I just want us to be prepared to work on that. Why when we have a declining enrollment, do we have a $5 million increase in the budget? And also, we're increasing our levy by $2.5 million based on your prediction. And yet we're doing a rollback of $2 million. So wrap that up in a cute little bow and tell us how to explain that.
And that's one, Larry, I don't want you having to do that one right on the spot. That would be
That's what my suggestion was. I can put something together.
Yeah, for the 23rd. That's a great question, Laura. And that way we can have it delineated between the federal dollars, in the different state categorical dollars for you, so we can have an exact answer for you. Because you're right. How do you square all those different numbers, and what does that look like?
Laura and others, Larry's off the hook, but Laura hit the two last things that I wanted to clarify and comment on. This was the only suggestion I had, and that really links to a declining enrollment and constant employee count. And I really want to go to the final year where in the second last year on your ending fund balance, you're down to 6.7 million. 6 million would be 5% of our 120 odd thousand, or 6.1, and 600,000 is roughly what we carry forward each year in other items. So in I think it's 22, 23, if that projection were true, we would be exactly at 5% on our minimum. And then when we get to 23, 24, and I've listened to Laura before say from a bonding point of view, you need to project something that means that you're keeping yourself fiscally sound. And given that we do have a declining enrollment in our projection, I know there's a difference between special ed, other kids, and depending what category they are in terms of their costs. But I do think for presentation, well, not for presentation, for structural provisional purposes, if we've got a declining enrollment, we may not know where, but we probably should be planning on reducing staffing at some point, at least to the point where we don't put ourselves in deficit on the 5% reserve. So that was probably the only suggestion I had for the 4-year mini budget. And then I wanted to clarify the way I see the local levy. If you look at that, it's page 7, I think. No, it's not. Where is it? Page 17. It's roughly, we were at 150 because everybody was capped at that. Last year, I call it a nominal 180 that ended up at 173. Mm-hmm. And, on a calendar year basis, that kind of an increase is about 1.6 million, I think. And if you throw in a 4% escalation in asset values, then you get to the roughly 2.5 million that it goes up from 2020 to 2021. And that's the tax burden that people are facing. And then if you flow that through to the school year, you've got half of the taxes from one calendar year and half of the taxes from the other calendar year. But if you jump 150, 173, 180, call it, to 210, you're doing the same kind of jump successively, and you'll see the same 2.5 million in the levy revenue side. And this is what I wanted to confer. I did some back of the envelope calculations, and that's where I was going to say that roughly a third of that 2.5 million is assessment increases at about 4%. And then it's 0.8 from each of the 2 calendar years where there's been an increase. So the bottom line I was getting into was looking hard at 2021, where we're taking decisions as opposed to just doing a projection. The impact of staying at 173, 180, the way we are with the voters, and not reducing our rollback. And that's where I see the rollback is us saying we're authorized to 250 and we're giving back some of it. We're planning to give back less of it because we need it for accomplishing necessary budget revenues would be what I see as the proposal on the table. But if a decision was taken not to change the target level, my estimate is it will be about 800,000 adverse impact on revenue in the 2021 school year. Is that correct? Or you can work on it.
I will. Yeah. And I don't have off the top of my head. I have some calculations here, but I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to do that because I think that whole issue, I think the reason I opened my mouth is I want to clarify that I understand it. But I also think those are the calculations that go into the transparent facts of what's in the budget. And from the transparent facts, the board and the district and the people will make their feelings known.
Yeah, I get what you're talking about. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, but why I've got you there though, on the enrollment issue, the reason there's a difference is that we're adding transitional kinder, which is not part of the birth rate because they're a year younger. The traditional.
Okay, I wondered whether that was it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you look at the second year, I'm off. I don't have that difference of 20 or 17.
Yeah, you'll fly about 3 in the second year.
Yeah, and I was more conservative.
Yeah. Okay, and that's the education I needed, transitional to kinder. Okay, thank you.
Larry, there's quite a few positions posted on the web to be hired. Are those positions already budgeted in this projection?
Anything that's posted is in the budget.
Is?
Is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question that's maybe not specific to this budget, but going back to the CARES dollars, and maybe Paul, you can also chime in with Larry. So some of the portion of our CARES dollars are being put towards technology to update and make sure that we're hitting the ground running this fall. But I'm also wondering, because we had a significant number of students who were not engaging, I'm wondering if CARES dollars are being applied towards re-engaging students or seeing what needs they have, or maybe you could just kind of talk about the students who were not engaging over the last several months, how and if and how we can use those care dollars to address those areas that were not where we wanted them to be.
Yeah. I'll jump first, Larry, and then you
Sure.
can add the details of it behind me. The big piece that they were talking about are we have to charge back against the amount we get. So, and it had to be very specific, all relating around to the CARES Act. So one of the things that the pieces that we were looking at was the technology, definitely, because that is a must have for us if this were to continue. It's also around a lot of the cleaning. It's amazing how much money is going towards just cleaning face masks. Kind of some of those pieces that started adding up dollars really quickly when you start thinking about the long term of face masks, the number of face masks and that type of work. Mark and his team have really been kind of working out those numbers as it relates to what are we going to need to open the school year next year, and even the current work, because the guidelines on cleaning the buildings is at a much higher rate than it was previously. Mark, I'm not sure if you want to jump in, or if Larry, you want to go from there.
I'll let Mark step in, and then I'm looking at the actual piece there.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting ready to spend upwards of $300,000 just on cleaning equipment for next year, that we'll charge back to the CARES Act, so that we can keep our schools clean so we can get kids in the building next year. So
the actual connection for making sure that our kids are connected, those dollars won't go to that. Those dollars will go directly to the technology, what Mark's talking about, and then a few other items that we have room for. Because it's amazing how quickly $1.4 million goes. It really is amazing when you're talking a substantial dollar of that is going towards the technology. Larry?
Yeah, actually, yeah, there's most of it is technology. Maybe 300-something thousand was in, we've earmarked for the supplies that Mark was talking about. And then we had a bucket of monies that was going to the summer bridge program, where we were setting up packets for students to help out. That was about 70,000, but the lion's share of it is technology, Chromebooks, iPads.
Yeah, I did forget what Larry said was a lot of our early work, those first couple of weeks of just getting packets printed and purchased, and all of that work is being charged back to that as well.
And then just to confirm, it's my understanding that everything in the 1.4 million claim is reflected either in the 2021 proposed budget or in the opening funds balance as having been spent in 1920. Is that correct?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, as
Good.
long as it goes out before that June 30th. Or no, I apologize. It's August. What's our end date for the fiscal year on this?
August 31.
August 31.
Thank you.
Others? So you've given us a lot of good pieces for Tuesdays when we come to the Tuesday meeting with the board. The piece that Laura talked about and Martin, we will have that ready for the board on Tuesday night.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I've got my answers.
I'm good. Thank you. Great job, Larry.
Thank you.
Wow.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, then I will adjourn the meeting. See everybody on Tuesday.
And thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.